Hello everyone and welcome to Hot Springs, Arkansas, the home of Oaklawn Park. Oaklawn is one of the oldest tracks in the country, originally founded in 1904. However, in the last 20-30 years, it has really blossomed into one of the premier racing destinations in the entire United States. Open from the beginning of December until the beginning of May, Oaklawn has turned into one of the premier racetracks in the country over the winter time and has started to see some of the best horses compete. Its feature race is the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby, which is one of the major prep races for the Kentucky Derby, usually held now about 5 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. But the meet is littered with top-level stakes races that have been just getting bigger and bigger over the years. I know Oaklawn is starting to be on a lot of people's bucket lists, so we're going to take a walk around it today, show you what it's like for when you eventually make it to the Racing Festival of the South. It should be pretty easy to find parking when you first arrive because there's a massive lot that is shared by the hotel, the casino, and the racetrack, as well as some businesses that are offering parking across the street. However, you will have to pay for the parking, so just be aware for that. Bring your cash with you. Then you just walk along the street and you'll get to the racetrack itself. You're going to have to go past the casino and the hotel, but you'll know when you get to the racetrack because waiting for you is the legendary American Pharoah. Oaklawn has a beautiful statue of American Pharoah, the 2015 Arkansas Derby and Triple Crown winner, probably by far the best horse that ever raced here, at least in recent years. And if you're a fan of this channel, you know he's a pretty important one for me. After all, the channel is named after him. He's one of my all-time favorite horses, so this was a bucket list destination, making sure that I could see his statue at Oaklawn Park. When you first walk through the set of doors behind American Pharoah, the very first thing you run into is the paddock. But we'll come back to the paddock later, and we're going to take a look around the inside of the grandstand first. Oaklawn has one of my favorite indoor grandstands of any track that I've been to. The first floor is going to be filled with all the wagering windows, as well as your concessions and your bars. There's a main sports bar kind of in the middle of the first floor called the Mainline Sports Bar. I've had dinner here a couple times and it is fantastic, especially if you're wanting to watch the games after the races. But then you also have some other restaurants and other food areas spread out throughout the grandstand. And when you're at Oaklawn, you have to try the famous handcrafted corned beef sandwiches. But the thing that really kind of sets Oaklawn apart, in my opinion, is just the design. I love how much horse stuff they have. They really remember in the decorating that they are a racetrack and that horses are the main attraction. Because they have statues, they have the pole markers decorating all around. They have old comics that are pretty funny to look at. But overall, it's just really cool to walk around, take a look at all the horse stuff they have decorating. Some racetracks you walk into, and until you walk outside, you'd have no idea you were at a racetrack. At Oaklawn, you know it's all about the horses. And back to the paddock, which is an indoor paddock, which usually I don't prefer. I usually like them being outside, but for Oaklawn, it works. It's right in the center of everything, so anybody who is in the racetrack can get a good view of the horses, as long as they get on the front row. If you're not in the front row, since you are looking down, it's a little hard to see. It's not going to be like maybe some of the other indoor paddocks where you're all on the ground level, you are looking down at the horses. Other than that being an issue to see, if you are in the front row, it works pretty well. You can see pretty much all the stalls, no matter where you're standing. You'll have half the horses on one side, half on the other, and the fence line goes almost around the whole thing. So you're able to get a good view of the horses and get to see them a lot easier before they head out to the track. The paddock runway splits the apron into two sections, so you'll have to go around the paddock to get from one side to the other. The horses will enter into the paddock runway from the barn area, which is on the far right on the clubhouse turn, kind of next to where the hotel is. So they will have to walk past the right side of the paddock tunnel in order to get into the paddock. But when they exit the paddock, they're going to make a left and go in front of the main apron past the finish line for the post parade. You can stand on the apron itself, or they have big steps attached to the front of the grandstand, so that way you can try to get a little bit more of an elevated view, which is what I did for every race. But now we've made it to the track itself. So you can see there's some trees out there in the infield, as well as the tote board that kind of get in your way. But otherwise you can see pretty well from right here on the ground level, especially the stretch runs. You have that massive hotel there on the clubhouse turn, which I've always wanted to get a room for up there, but I always go on either New Year's weekend or Arkansas Derby, so the rooms are very expensive at that point. But that would be quite a view to be able to watch from in your hotel room. And then as we get to the grandstand itself, you can see most of it is glassed in, but you do have those big staircases that I mentioned, kind of helping you out to get a better vantage point, see over some of the stuff in the infield. In general, I always like being up outdoors when I'm watching the races instead of being down on the ground or back in behind glass, so the staircases end up being a big help when you're at Oaklawn, especially on the bigger days because they do get a pretty big crowd and the staircases run the entirety of the grandstand. So no matter where you go, you will be able to find a spot where you're going to be able to get that elevated view, and there's several tiers to the staircases, so that way you can make sure that even if there are people on the staircases, you can always find a spot. Also, it's important to note that Oaklawn is a track that has 2 finish lines, so for your 1 mile distance races, they're actually going to be starting and finishing at the 16th pole. So just be alert for that, which luckily there's staircases down there and viewing space, so that way you can be closer to the finish line. Inside of the glass will be your indoor seating options, which could be useful, especially since Oaklawn is open during the winter months. The second floor looks pretty similar to the first floor. You're going to have your betting windows, you're going to have your concessions, a couple of bars. And the bars stick with the horse theme, which I love. I personally didn't watch any races from here because I like being outside by the horses, but especially on those cold days, this could be a neat spot to be able to catch all the racing action. Front and center to the left of the paddock tunnel and right in front of the finish line is the winner's circle. This is the Larry Snyder winner's circle, which is going to be the one used for almost all of the races. So the horses will walk in here, get their picture taken, and when the owner decides to donate some of the winnings to aftercare, you'll hear this sound as they ring the bell to alert the whole racetrack that money has been raised, which luckily all the times I've been there, that bell has been rung every single race. But for the big races, they're going to have a separate winner's circle across the way. It's easy to pick out because there's the big statue of horses racing, but that will be the winners of the big races like the Arkansas Derby will go in to get their pictures taken. And that's not the only thing that's special about the big races. Those big stakes races are going to have the horses actually get the riders up out on the inside of the dirt course. Technically where the turf course would be if they had one, but that would be about where you're looking. So after getting saddled inside of the paddock, the horses will walk out with the saddles on and then head on over to the grass in order to get the riders up in front of the whole grandstand. And Arkansas Derby Day is pretty different than the other days of racing. You're going to have the tents blocking your view, so that could potentially cost you a chance to see some of the stuff on the backside. But as you start getting into the springtime, not just on Arkansas Derby Day, Oaklawn Park does open up the Infield, which I was out there on Arkansas Derby Day, and it was pretty cool to be able to take in a race from there. You can wander around the big open area. There's a lot of great photo ops with some statues and the starting gate. And then also they had a lot of food trucks out there, so you could get something cool to eat. But that brings us to the end of our journey around Oaklawn Park. This track is fantastic. If you love horse racing, you're going to love coming here. The atmosphere is great. The locals love the sport and they love the track, and they show up to support it on its big days and its small days. You're going to see some great racing and take in some fantastic views while being able to have a little bit of fun. And also being able to admire how much Oaklawn loves their horses. But thank you all for tagging along on this track profile. I hope you make it to Oaklawn Park at some point in the near future. Let me know what you thought of the track profile below, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to see more track profiles like it. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you at the races.